evening and welcome along to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith, and tonight's special guest, Steve Howey. Good evening, Steve.
Steve, how are you doing?
I'm good, mate. I'm good, very good. Another week, and we seem to be reaching an end game with the takeover. Today's WTO day. The report has come out, and there's been a few mixed messages on Twitter and on the various media outlets. A lot of people putting stuff out there. Ian Dennis put a tweet out basically saying that it didn't look good for the Newcastle takeover, with Saudi being condemned by the WTO. The New York Times has come out with it appears that the WTO itself has not weighed in on the Newcastle deal specifically. It's not the WTO's place to comment on that. The report, which is out later, deals with the specific issue of piracy and Saudi attempts to block legal action by rights owners, the Premier League, FIFA, UEFA, etc. So there's mixed messages coming from different media outlets. Do you think this really matters in the grand scheme of things, or do you think this is probably the reason the Premier League has been waiting, just so this comes out and there'll be no skeletons in this takeover cupboard before they give permission for it to go ahead?
Well, hopefully that's why the Premier League have delayed. I mean, obviously it has took a lot longer than we expected. There's always going to be, kind of controversy in some ways if it is a foreign owner, particularly Saudi Arabia. As I said, listen, I mean, I know you've said there's been some reports and people have put on Twitter, then they've had them taken down. Look, again, for me, and we've had this conversation, unless it's really coming from, kind of Reuben Brothers or Amanda Staveley or the people, the Saudi people, or Newcastle United, and obviously you get the ticket tape at the bottom with Sky Sports, then I think anything that comes out, you can't really take fully on board because you're just not 100% sure whether it's true. Obviously, it riles people up because everybody's desperately waiting for this takeover to go through. But listen, it has took a little bit longer. As I said, there is obviously a lot of I's to be dotted and T's to be crossed. So you just hope that it isn't a sign of kind of what possibly could happen, the worst case scenario. As I said, for me, the Saudis coming to this country and investing in Newcastle in the area, I think will be amazing for the economy. Not only just in Newcastle, but the kind of country as a whole. We've seen in the past that the Saudis have been more than welcome, whether it's been Downing Street, whether it's been Buckingham Palace, and other top people that we have in this country, and that doesn't seem to be a problem. So I'm still looking at it where it's obviously taken longer than expected, but I still think it'll go through.
Yeah, I would agree with you, mate. And I think the actual report is out later today. We'll get some kind of indication as to how that plays out. But I just believe that the Premier League have been waiting for this. And I just think they don't want any skeletons in the cupboard. I think they know quite fine what is in it. They want to see the reaction. But I just don't think it's going to play any part in the actual takeover. In other news today, Steve, we've seen Danny Rose is now available for purchase. £5 million has been the price tag placed on his head. Would you pay £5 million and would you bring him to Newcastle and make it permanent?
I think it's decent money for him. As I said, I think that, with Danny Rose, it can come with a little bit of controversy. He's obviously made his feelings very clear about, kind of the pandemic that's happening. But I still think he's a very, very good player. I still think he could definitely get in the England squad. I think maybe he's getting the first place. The first team place is difficult with Chilwell. But I definitely feel as though he could still be kind of in and around, possibly. But there's no doubt, even if that's not the case, he's still a very good player. And I think, it's I suppose in this day, with the fees that you see getting banded about, 5 million's not a vast amount of money. But I think it'll be interesting to see. I don't know. I'm not sure if you know how much it would cost to get Willems back, because I thought he did really well when he was playing, and was obviously unfortunate with his injury. Like I said, it'll be interesting to see how much he cost and how much his wages would be, because I've got no doubt that Danny Rose's wages will be quite high.
Yeah, 100%. I'm not sure on Willems. Obviously, I think they'll be waiting to see how he comes through, his recuperation. But I would agree with you. If it came up with a toss-up between buying Willems, a fully fit Willems, or a fully fit Danny Rose, I'd be more inclined to go with Willems, especially with the fact that he can score a few goals as well. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. Dummet is another interesting topic of conversation this week. Paul Dummet, of course, wasn't included in the 25-man squad for the final part of the season because he was injured. We expected him to miss the final part of the season, but obviously with COVID now, the season is extended, and Dummet isn't allowed to play in the Premier League games. He is available for the FA Cup game against Man City, but it's a big, big blow, that really, because Dummet's a key player.
Yeah, I like Dummet. I think he's, you get what basically it says on the tin with him. Yeah. He's very reliable. You put him in the position and he does the job, whether it's pretty much most positions in the back four. It is a blow that he's fit and he can't be used. I think obviously, with Tottenham, with Harry Kane, they must have just left him in the squad and were hoping that he might come back by the end of the season. And obviously, can he get a couple of games in before the Euros? Obviously, everything has changed now. But obviously, Newcastle and everybody else, we never expected this to happen. So, of course, they thought, well, look, he's got a bad injury. He's not going to make it back. We need to utilise the full strength of what we've got at Newcastle United. And, of course, bring somebody else in. Look, it's a blow for the lad. But obviously, as you said, he's available for the FA Cup game against Manchester City. Whether the manager plays him or not, that's another thing, because he might just want to try and get the lads that's in the squad, in the first team squad that's available. He might want to give them game time rather than knowing that he can play Paul Dummet, but he's not going to be able to use him again. So it'll be an interesting one for the manager to decide that one. But as I said, it's just unfortunate. I think the lad's just got to get his head down, work really hard, which I'm sure he will do, and make sure he's raring to go for next season.
We're a couple of weeks away from July the 1st, and essentially 3 players being out of contract. We discussed this last week about Matty Longstaff. This week, a lot of people talking about Andy Carroll. I've got to say, I've asked a lot of the ex-players, on your NUFC matters over the last few days about Andy Carroll's situation. Would you offer him a new contract? And I've got to say, it's probably around about 70-30 against offering him a new contract. He hasn't scored goals. He's injured quite a lot. That seems to be the reasons behind it. But those who've spoken up for him would probably say, he's a handful when he's fit. I mean, which camp do you come down on, Steve? Would you offer him a new short-term contract?
I think I think with some of these players, and it's happened with a few players at different clubs. I mean, some players, like I said, that some players have just sort of said, look, I'm not signing this little extension because I could get injured and my contract's up. I could get a potential big move. But that's their decision. I think somebody like Andy Carroll, who hasn't played a lot, does he get a contract until the end of this season? Then I would see it, for me, yes. But it would depend on would you then give him another year on the basis of him playing pretty much, or being involved pretty much in every game from now till the end of the season. And even then, it would have to be a contract where you're getting paid as you play. We all know his record of injuries, but I've always said, and I still believe this, half fit Andy Carroll is a nightmare for central defenders. They just don't like his physicality. Simple as that. He is aggressive. He mightn't score, goals, or certainly as many goals as that you want, but he causes chaos in defenders and how they're set up, because, as I said, it's just the pure physical presence of him. For me, I think, as I said, you would like to think that he would, because he hasn't played that many games since he's been here, that he would sort of say, look, I'll play until this season ends. I'll prove to you that I'm going to be fit in between them games. I'm going to be available in them games. And if that's the case, then for me, it has to be a pay-as-you-play deal. And even then, the money per week, if he is fit, I wouldn't have thought would be that high, because you just can't can't just guarantee, just give him a sort of 20 grand a week or something if he's only playing, even if he plays 2 games every 3 months. It's still like kind of 60, 70 grand or something like that. You know what I mean? It's a lot of money. So I would have to bring that down, but it would certainly depend on how he features and how much he features from now until the end of the season.
You were a young player who came through the ranks at St James's Park. You've been in the situation that Matty Longstaff's been in. What advice would you give Longstaff, with 2 weeks to go, an impending takeover on the horizon? What advice would you give him? Would you tell him to take the offer while it's there, because 30 grand a week is a lot of dough for somebody of his age? Or would you say, look, stick it out, you could do really well at the club?
I totally get where he's coming from, because I was in a situation where you're playing week in, week out, and then they're bringing in players that's supposed to play in your position, and you're keeping them out. And they're on, really good money. Even then, back in the day, they were on very good money. And of course, you get like, well, kind of, why am I not roughly on the same amount of money as them? But I'm talking about, I'm playing week in, week out. I think he's played 6 games.
Yeah,
it's not a lot of games. Do you know what I mean? I think I can understand where he's coming from, but I would understand it a little bit more if he'd pretty much played, 20, 25, 30 games. 6 games and then demanding more than 30 grand a week. I think that's, if I'm being honest, and I'm not being horrible to Matty, I think that's a bit rich, without trying to be funny on words. I think he has to realise that, to get money, I think you have to earn it. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. I think the money that Premier League players earn now is just ridiculous. It's astronomical money.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think if you played 6 games to get offered 30 grand a week, you'd snap the hands off. Let's be honest, it's £30,000 a week. I mean, he's only a young boy, and he's only played 6 games. And I think if he goes to Italy, for me, I think he'll disappear. I mean, yes, I think it was at Udinese, and obviously they've got links with Watford, and he could come back to Watford, but he could not. So he could go over there and just vanish. Where here, he's still got an opportunity. The fans know who he is. They know what he's kind of capable of. But it's up to him to prove to the manager in training and the games that he does get played, although being limited at this moment, to prove to everybody that he is worth a starting place. And I don't care if it's like, your Shelby's and all these kind of people. If you think you're good enough, well, then prove that you're good enough, and then the money will come. The amount of times, I mean, I had conversations with Kevin quite a lot. To be fair to Kevin, I was in his office every couple of months getting an upgrade, because he would actually sort of think, well, to be fair, I'm not going to get the same money, or wasn't going to, at that particular time, I'm not going to get the same money as Philippe Albert. I'm not going to get the same money as Darren Peacock or even Nikos. I was always kind of the lowest one, but I was the one that was playing. When fit, I was playing every week. I think I was only on the bench twice. So the manager thought a lot of me, and ultimately, eventually, it comes round, and you do get paid what you feel as though you're kind of on an even keel with the rest of the lads.
Yeah, 100%. The Premier League have spoken to the Newcastle United Supporters Trust about the ticket situation that we discussed last week. Obviously, the fans unhappy that they've paid for FA Cup tickets, season tickets. Obviously, won't be any use for these games because it's all behind closed doors. Premier League have said they will speak to Newcastle United, but they can't promise that anything can be done. It's disappointing, isn't it? It really does look, and I've said this a few times this week as well, like Mike Ashley has literally just walked away. He's locked the door, stuck his keys through the letterbox and just washed his hands of anything to do with the club. And that means that, fans won't get an answer until the new owners come in.
Well, yeah, I mean, basically it's just a final kind of 2 fingers up to the fans, really. It doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise you. It doesn't surprise the fans. I'm a little bit surprised that more can't be done with, by the Premier League to help these fans out, because, as we say, we've had a lot of fans from other clubs getting sorted out. But it just typifies the way that Newcastle are, and certainly are with the fans. And the fans probably has been the best in the country. I mean, obviously, fans from their team will probably say, well, ours are. But, knowing the fans for as long as I have and know how passionate they are, it's just an insult, really, because even though the trials and tribulations that Newcastle fans have had to put up with in God knows for how many years, they're still prepared to put their hands in the pocket and pay for the season ticket, and yet they're in this dilemma.
In a day when we criticise players for not doing things and for being overpaid, it's just been announced there that Marcus Rashford's plea to the government to continue free school meals during this summer holiday period of the pandemic has been passed. The government's obviously been outvoted by the backbenchers and all that. And not turning this into a political show, but what I just wanted to say, Steve, was that's fantastic effort by Marcus Rashford of Man United, speaking up and showing what footballers can actually do, and because they are quite influential.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you've got Marcus, and obviously you've got Raheem Sterling, who's done his bit for other different things and the racism side of it. But what Rashford's done is absolutely immense. I mean, was it 20 odd million? I think he's raised. I think he'd learned sign language as well in this particular time to help with another kind of project that he was doing. And I think he did something else. I can't remember what it was, but it just goes to show that somebody in the public eye, with doing it the right way, can make huge changes and huge changes for the better. And as I said, a lot of footballers get a lot of stick for various reasons, and some of it deserved. But I think a lot of people don't understand what a lot of footballers do that goes under the radar, and the charity work and different stuff that they do. But obviously Marcus's stuff has come out, and rightly so, and it's a fantastic thing that he's done and the right way forward.
Whilst we're not doing these shows live, I do put a request out for questions on Twitter, and had a good response as always. And Neil123 says, can you please tell Steve and his brother Lee, thanks for sponsoring me in 1997 for my bungee jump for CJD. And if he has a link, I will sponsor him 23 years later. Now, he's talking about your walking, Steve. Obviously, anyone who follows you on Twitter will be enjoying your videos where you're going to different places to continue your training. But for those who don't know, tell us what you're doing, and what you're raising money for.
Well, we're raising money for mental health and the NHS. Our group is called WATCH, which stands for Walking and Talking Charity Hikes. Obviously, there's a website and there'll be a Just Giving page as well. Basically, all the money raised, because we're doing Kilimanjaro next July, hopefully, touch wood. All money raised goes to mental health kind of charities, as well as NHS, because obviously with what's happened at this moment. As I said, there will be a Just Giving page, but there'll obviously be a website page where you can go on it. You can see exactly what the rest of the lads is doing, the walks and all the different things. Obviously, there's going to be golf days. There's going to be celebrity football games. There's going to be a kind of variety night. So, different lads will get up and do little, like 10, 15 minutes here and there of kind of a sportsman's dinners type thing. But we're going to be doing a shed load of them, as well as the golf days and auctioning different stuff. And a lot of ways out where people can get involved and just donate. Even if they don't want to get involved, they can just donate. And as I said, we don't get a penny, absolutely nothing. Everything goes to those charities. And I think it's just raising awareness, not so much the NHS, because obviously that's gone through the roof, and rightly so, but certainly for mental health. And that's why we do the walks. We just basically sort of say, and I do the videos, and it's just sort of, get out, because a lot of people do get stuck in the house and do get down, and we just more or less, the message is, even if it's 10, 15 minutes of just getting out, clearing your head, getting some fresh air, the positivity that you can actually get from that, it works wonders. I mean, before all this started, if somebody said to me, me and the missus will be going out and going for a walk for, 6 miles, 5 miles, 4 miles, 10 miles, certainly the 10 miles and the 12 miles ones that we've done, I'd have sort of said they're absolutely crazy. But we went for a one at Ripon yesterday. It was lovely. And we were out for about 3.5 hours. But the sights that you see as well, even if you're just jumping in your car for like 10, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, it's just the sights that you would see that I would never have seen. And yet a lot of it is on your doorstep.
Yeah, no,
and it's free.
Yeah, well, that's it.
Free.
It's free. We've got a wonderful country, and it's something which we don't tend to pay much attention to. You know what I mean? We'll go abroad, etc. But as you say, you don't have to go far, especially where we live in the northeast. It's some fantastic places. Danielle, she says, can you tell us how we can support your charity walks? Well, as you say, there'll be a website, it's Watch, and there will be links, there'll be a good Just Giving page, etc. I think as time goes on and you get closer to actually doing the walk, but we'll post that. I'm sure Steve will be putting that up on his Twitter, and I'll share it as well. Try and give Steve as much support as we can. Neil DeCarter, he says, can you ask Steve if he's a bit annoyed that when you Google him, some actor has stolen his name and jumped him on Google? I'm sure you've probably got a lot more serious things to worry about, Steve, but does that affect you?
No, it does not, to be fair. Although sometimes I'll get like DMs and I'll think, all right, fair enough, because I am getting a lot of direct messages lately because of the walk and stuff. But I will get one, and it'll be like, I thought you were great in, he's in this show. It was an English show, but he's in this show over in the US. Dear me, I forget what it's called now. Shameless, she's shouting.
Yes.
And it was like, I love this bit and I love that bit, and I just want to say, look, it's not me. I mean, sometimes it's amazing, you just think all you have to do is just look at the top bit of the Twitter page, and you'll be able to find out that Steve Howey has absolutely nothing to do with this one.
Yeah.
But some people, I don't know.
I just why you might get an invite. You and Karen might get an invite to the Oscars, mate. So I wouldn't be, just make sure you read all these inboxes.
No, I mean, in all fairness, I'll reply and I'll just say, listen, sorry, you've got the wrong one. Just check the Twitter kind of handle thing. But I mean, obviously, because it's in the US, my phone, it could ping at like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. So now I've got to put it on mute because I'm thinking, who's getting in contact? And it's somebody that is a Shameless fan.
Gary Roper says, I'm glad you've got good reception. He thought you'd be hiking across the moors. Saltburn, then Whitby for fish and chips.
Saltburn was amazing, but it was just the weather was awful, really, when it was absolutely lashing down. But it was a great walk. Then we did Wetherby, I think, just at the weekend there. The fish and chips were nice. You have got to fend off the seagull. The seagulls are massive, by the way. Yesterday we went to Ripon, and actually I was just discussing with the wife about where we're going to go when she finishes work at 3. So we'll probably dip out and get all the tea. So the tea's all ready, so you haven't got to like kind of mess about for a couple of hours boiling tatties or whatever it is, boiling tatties. It sounds like I'm about 70-year-old. But like it's all prepared, just so it's basically like a half an hour wait when we get in. But we'll be out for about another 3 or 4 hours. It's not like that all the time. And I mean, I've sort of said with the walk, and it's not about how far you go. It's not about how long you're out. It's not about how quick you do it. It's just about getting out, getting some fresh air, clearing your mind. And as I said, this is all about mental health, because you do feel a million times better just for doing it. I mean, we came back the other day after having a nice walk out, and we couldn't stop talking about it because it was such a lovely walk. And, as I said, last year, if somebody said, "Oh, do you want to go for a walk?" Yeah, I would have I'd have looked at them strange and went, "Why?" But honestly, getting out and seeing these sites, it's been absolutely amazing. And as we've discussed, it's on your doorstep.
Yeah, 100%. It's a great opportunity to go out. I mean, I've been doing it as with lockdown, just getting out and exercising. And yeah, it's just good. You notice things you wouldn't have normally noticed. Jason, he says, good afternoon to you both. I just want to know, with the WTO report out today, how does this make you both feel? How does it make you feel, Steve, when this comes out? I mean, we've discussed it at the top of the programme. He's asking if Shell as well, who's Red Rose Michelle, will be digesting the info and giving it her verdict. I'm sure she will be.
Is that she's a solicitor or something,
yeah.
Isn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, all the bits and pieces that's gone on, and the different, whether it's tweets, whether it's people, there's stuff in the media, whether you press and stuff like that. I'll only believe it when it comes from Newcastle or comes from the group itself that's in Takeover, or there's the ticket tape and it's a Sky Sports exclusive, something like that. The rest of the stuff, look, there's always going to be, is Amanda Staveley's battle with Barclays, is that hindering it? Is this one? Is that one? And there's like loads of different things. It's in the Premier League's hands. As I said, there's a shed load more I's to be dotted and T's to be crossed for this to go through, because they want to make sure it's right. Because the Premier League, it is such a global business for them. You know, they're such a global name that they want to make sure that they do it right and sort of, as I said, just make sure that there's no, as you said, skeletons in the closet. You know, so it goes through and then people kicking off and sort of saying the Premier League didn't disclose this or they didn't do that. I'm sure the Premier League will absolutely be making sure that they do absolutely everything. So when it does go through, and I still believe it will, that everything will be right for everybody.
Colin Wilson, Tooney, he says, hi Steve, how does financial fair play work? After the takeover, if we attract a big sponsor, i.e. Aramco, will the money we generate from that be available for transfers under the financial fair play guidelines?
I think there's ways and means that teams and clubs have done that. Obviously, financial fair play is the fact that you cannot really spend any more than what you're generating yourself. I think Newcastle with you know, getting in packed houses week in, week out, sending you know, buying the merchandise, because that's what happened in the day when I was playing. You know, no sooner had a strip gone into the club shop, it was getting sold. But obviously, there's a lot more other things globally that the club would be doing. You know, look at Manchester City, how they cope with it. Of course, there's been this little trials and tribulations, and I think they're up now at the court of, I'm not sure if it's court of arbitration or some sort of thing that's going on that they might get banned. But they seem to think that they haven't done anything wrong, I believe, because I don't think you can have such a big club like Manchester City and not have the right people that are making sure that it's done correctly. And I think Newcastle will make sure that they do exactly the same.
Steve Keane asks an interesting question. He says, could you please ask Steve, if Andy Carroll was to stay at the club, could he be turned into a centre-half?
No.
Simple answer to a pretty good...
Well, I think aerially, there isn't a problem. But I think it's just the actual, the twisting and the turning.
Position.
I think that's... Yeah, I mean, I think it's just... I'm not... For me, it was kind of an easy transition. But I think given Andy's joints and the lack of movement in them, I don't think he'd be up for kind of, you know, marking somebody like a Aubameyang or a Aguero. But last 10 minutes and you need somebody to defend, absolutely stick him in the back, because he'd head everything if it's round next to him. But I think he's more comfortable being up there anyway, being up front.
Yeah. Mark Dilbo says, away from football, what's Steve Howey's favourite film?
I've always liked Shawshank Redemption. I do like that. I do like them kind of films. It was funny because we got asked this question not so long ago on a Twitter thing, and I answered it. I can't remember now for the life of me what I put. You get asked that much stuff, and in all fairness, normally you can't do it all because you just haven't got time. But because we're locked down and stuff, you're just trying to keep yourself busy, so you're doing bits and pieces that I suppose normally you wouldn't really do. So it's kind of all kind of got together, and I can't remember different questions that people's asked me, and I can't remember the answers that I've given, to be quite honest. But I've always liked Shawshank Redemption. They're my kind of films. So I mean, obviously you've got the classics of Scarface and Goodfellas and stuff like that. I always like them kind of things. I'll tell you what I did watch the other day, which I didn't think, and I've watched them, but I wouldn't go to the pictures to see it. It was only because obviously it's lockdown. And I watched Bad Boys, and it's all right.
Yeah, you'll stumble across stuff which you didn't watch. I mean, I'm always late to the party with box sets, Steve. I mean, Game of Thrones, I think I was about 6 years behind everybody else and didn't really get it. It's not my kind of thing, but I got into that and watched that. I'm watching Breaking Bad again with the missus because she didn't watch it the first time round, and I've watched it all. But yeah, look, I mean, it's what that's another bonus of lockdown. You know, I've read a few books and managed to watch a few bits and bobs which I wouldn't have normally watched. You know.
Well, I bought books. I bought Eddie Jones's book, and I'm getting Paul Ferris to give us his book to read, because I was supposed to be going to Maldives tomorrow, and that's not happening. So. But yeah, with the box sets, I mean, I watched Power, which was really good.
Yeah.
Me and the missus finished Killing Eve. That was canny. We do like Ray Donovan. So normally we're just on catch up with Ray Donovan. We're in the last series, I think, series 7. Yeah. So when we come back, what tends to happen with us is when we come back from a walk, we'll have something to eat, and then we'll stick Ray Donovan on, probably watch one episode and kind of put another one on, but fall asleep halfway through it. So we tend to have to rewind that one the following day.
Critical Thinking asks, does Steve think Kevin Keegan left Newcastle at the right time all those years ago, or was it the end of the road, or should he have given it another year or two?
We were disappointed with Kevin towards the end, it has to be said, because we felt as though we were like 1 or 2 signings away from perfection. We were nearly there. I love Kevin Keegan, absolutely love him to bits, but he did have a tendency to spit his dummy out now and again. Kevin was like that. Sometimes if he didn't get his own way, he'd throw his toys a little bit, kind of out the pram a little bit. But and I think sometimes that was to get his own way, and 9 times out of 10 was to John. He got his own way. But we were disappointed because we felt as though, the team, he changed the team when he didn't have to change the team. Because the dynamics of the team shifted dramatically. And I think that was a big cause of why we kind of failed on them last few games, even though we didn't go on a bad run. I think if the team had stayed the same, even though you could have bought David Batty, you could have bought Tino Escria, 2 great players, 2 great lads, we didn't need them at that particular point. The team was doing very well with likes of Lee Clark playing in that position, Keith Gillespie playing on the right, and Peter Beardsley just behind Les. We were fine. But then obviously when Kevin went, it's the same as at any club. When a new manager comes in, there's players that he likes and players that he doesn't like, and then there's a exit of players and a lot of players coming in. And of course, with Rude and Kenny, it kind of, again, it's what managers want, because ultimately they're thinking, I'm going to pick a team that's going to make me successful and keep me in a job. And unfortunately, when Kenny came, there was just players that he just didn't fancy, and of course that's when the team started getting broken up.
The Mags asks, Steve, why didn't you play a bigger role in Harry's Heroes TV programme? Now, I know we've spoken about this on other platforms, but we haven't done it on this show. So just explain, why you didn't play more of a part. You were definitely the fittest player, one of the fittest players in the team.
I did the first series. I did the three first series there. But the second season, there was a lot of travel. And I just sort of said, look, for this one, because the level that you're playing at is obviously a little bit higher, I just felt that whilst I do my own training, and I train like 5 or 6 days a week. Before lockdown, now I'm in the garage or going for a walk. But before lockdown, I was going to the gym 5 days a week. Now, that's absolutely fine, just to keep yourself ticking over, whether it's some cardio, whether it's just some strength and conditioning. But football training is completely different. And whilst I was classed as one of the subs, I was always going to play a big part in it because Reza couldn't really do it because obviously with his issues. So I'd asked them, look, bring me down or take me away to these, when you go to Spain to do some all-weather, like some nice weather training, or if you're having meetups, just make sure I'm there because I want to work with the ball as well, because I can only do so much in the garden or on a field. I need that kind of that football movement. They didn't want to do that. So I says, well, look, I am coming up 49, and whilst I'm fit, I'm not going to hurt myself because all of a sudden you want me just to jump on a train and then the very same day play 90 minutes or 80 minutes. I said, it's just not possible. It's not feasible. So if you're not going to do that, then I don't want to do it. They wouldn't budge, so I left.
Fair enough. Alan B. NUFC says, how big will the fallout be if this takeover is rejected by the Premier League?
I dread to think. Can you imagine? Wow. Can you imagine if Mike Ashley comes back? Don't get me wrong, this year has been horrendous for one thing and another, whether it's been the bushfires, the riots, the pandemic, the list goes on and on and on. And then can you imagine for Newcastle fans where it's all of a sudden they've still got Mike Ashley as owner? Listen, I think the good thing about this is I don't think Mike Ashley wants to be there anymore. He wants to sell it. Looks like this time So I think that it looks as though he's desperate to be out. And I think he'll try and do as much as he possibly can to make sure that this happens. It's not like the other times where he feels as though it's time wasters and all this kind of thing. I think he's had enough. And for me, I think he might bend a little bit just to make sure the deal goes through. So let's try not to think of that one.
Yeah, fair play. Paul Oxley says, gut reaction, lads. I know everyone wants this takeover to go through, but having followed Newcastle for a number of years, my gut tells me this isn't going to come off. Put it this way, would you put your house on it going through? Great show as always. Thanks, Paul. Would I put my house on it? Look, I've been confident all the way through. Me personally, I did feel it'll go through. Steve, you said as well today, you feel it'll go through. I'm certainly not a betting man. I wouldn't gamble anything on a result of a takeover, but I don't think I can be any more positive than I have been for the last 3 months.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think I put £1 on the Grand National race. That's about it. I don't gamble in any way, shape or form. I think I was going to go back to the George Best quote of kind of, with all my money, I spent it on my missus and drink, and the rest I wasted. But I think with this one, I still definitely feel as though it's going to go through. I wouldn't bet my house on it, but of course, I'm more than confident.
NUFC 1980 to 1994, which is, of course, Mark Corby. Get yourself onto his Facebook page. Got some great stuff on there. He says, best centre-half and worst centre-half partner, Steve, at Newcastle.
I'm not going to criticise anybody that I played with, because I think if you reach that level, you're a decent player. I think a lot of fans probably will bring up Marcelino, but I liked him. I thought he was a nice man. I thought he was decent. Obviously, I think he'd lost the plot with the finger thing. But all the lads that I played with, whether it was Peasy, whether it was Phil, Alan Goma, Nikos, all of these, Laurent Charvier, great lads. And I always liked playing with them. You know, so everybody, for me, every one of them had a better quality than somebody else. But obviously, when they lacked in something, the other lads kind of made up for that as well. So I'm not certainly going to say one of them was the worst, but every one of them were excellent to play with.
Yeah, fair enough. A lot of people making suggestions, of course. A lot of people think Albert was probably your best and Charvier was probably your worst, but I know you won't answer that.
Charvier wasn't. Philippe was an unbelievable player, but Philippe Albert, let's be honest, he wasn't a defender. He used to bugger off. He was never there.
More of a midfielder.
He was centre forward.
Yeah, we weren't criticising that when he scored that goal against Man United anyway.
No.
Sam Yates says, what is his weapon of choice regarding cans? So he just wants to know what you're going to drink once this takeover goes through. Cans seem to have dropped off on Twitter a lot because people are starting to get nervous.
Yeah, I think I like a glass of red wine, if I'm being honest. But if I was to have a can, I can't drink Stella, anything like that, because it's just loony juice. You know, or that, is it Estelle? Something like that. It's just too strong for me. I'm a bit of a fanny, to be quite honest, when it comes to lagers. Anything strong, it just gives us a bad head and I'm poorly. So I do like Foster's. I don't mind Foster's. It's like 4%, so it's not too bad.
I haven't had a drink all the way through lockdown. So it'll either be Diet Coke for me or I'll end up getting some like vodka and Coke in a can or something like that, like a Smirnoff and Coke in a can. I think you can get that these days.
It's just as well you didn't ask Bez, because Bez back in the day, his 2 drinks of choice was Asti Spumante, ridiculous, or Malibu. I mean, what a fanny.
Yeah, he was saying a few things yesterday, like, but he didn't say them all, like, so I'm sure he'll enjoy watching this. I'll have to get you both on together, I think, at some point. Joe McCabe says, first question, as a former defender, who does he think our strongest current centre-back pairing is?
Listen, I like Lascelles. I think Lascelles is a great leader. Oh, well, I wouldn't say a great leader, but a very, very good leader. But I do like Lejeune and Shaw. I think they're good defenders, but I think they're good football players as well. So without being harsh on Lascelles, who I think is the best leader, and he is the leader for the whole team, I think if I was to pick a pairing, I would go with them too. I do like them too.
Okay. A second question, Joe McCabe's second question is, in regards to his role with referees, how does he think VAR should be improved or could be improved?
I think it's always going to take time to get used to it. I mean, if you look at how it's been introduced in the other ways in different sport, there was always going to be problems. And there always was with these other sports as well. But now it just seems second nature. It's still, I mean, listen, if the ball's over the line, the ball's over the line. It's as simple as that. But I think sometimes it's still going to be down to sort of the referee's discretion. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the offside thing where it's like your heel's offside and then all of a sudden now you're in play and then you're offside. I don't agree with that. I think there was talk about, can you give it like, there might be like kind of a player's width that you can get away with. Look, again, there's going to be trials and tribulations with it, and it'll probably start up again this time. But it will get better. But I would like to see somehow the offside thing, because that was farcical at times when, you know, as I say, a player was coming back towards his own goal, but his heel was offside or his toe was offside. You know, I just think, look, for me, football is about entertaining fans. It's the entertainment business. Sort of rule out goals for sort of things like that is ridiculous. I can understand it if it's like a Thierry Henry against the Republic of Ireland, absolutely. But when it's like your toenail, I don't agree with it. But ultimately, if you're offside, you're offside. It's as simple as that. But I'm not a big fan of it.
Graham Townsley was asking us about the WTO report, which we've already covered. He also says, with the fish and chips tasting better by the sea, Steve, he's never heard of anyone bringing their own bread.
You've got to bring your own bread and butter. You can't get bread and butter in a shop. I brought my own tea as well. And it was lovely because, I mean, I turned around, I turned the camera at my missus, and straight away she was tucking into the chips, Arnie. And I was like, is that just chips? And just put fish in as well. But yes, I think after the long walk and you can sit down and you think, do you know what? I'm going to enjoy this because I feel as though I deserve a little bit, just like a little, you know, like a little daft treat.
Yeah.
I haven't had fish and chips for God knows how long, and it was just lovely to sit there fighting off the seagulls. But it was lovely just to sit there. I could have done with a little bit more salt and vinegar on it. But having said that, it was nice to have. Nice little treat.
Fantastic. Alan Miller says, do you think players see Newcastle as a bigger club as we do, even though we haven't been successful over the years?
I think players get a shock when they come. I think they get a shock at the ground, and I think when they first walk out, they get a shock. I don't think they realise. I think they might go, oh yeah, it looks big and stuff like that. But I think once they walk out on that pitch with a packed house, that's when it hits home. Now some handle it and some don't. But I think some players don't realise really how big it is and how big of a task it is. But in all fairness, if you give your all and you sort of, you know, you're half decent and fans can see that, then you're on your way. You know, they'll love you. But as I said, some players all of a sudden when they go out on that pitch and they see it and it's packed and the noise, you see some players, or it just happened in the past, they're just like rabbit in headlights. They're like, oh, I'm not too sure they can handle this. But for me, and for a lot of players, that is what being a footballer is all about, being in that kind of arena.
Alan White says, looking back now, how underrated do you think Paul Kitson was? Because he could walk into any of our teams over the last 15 years.
Kitch was a good player. I think Kitch was dead unfortunate because obviously there was the rigmarole initially before he signed. And then he was kind of branded as asking for too much and stuff like that, but it wasn't the case. He wanted to sign. But anyway, he came in, and I think it was difficult for Kitts because at that particular time, Kevin had gotten rid of the reserves.
That's right.
And so he wasn't playing any games whatsoever. Now, even if you're playing in the reserves, the step up from the resis to the first team is huge. But at least it's game time. He wasn't getting any game time because he would just train. And I can remember he was kind of thrown in one game, and I can remember Kevin harrowing him, and I just thought it's unfair, really, because he's not up to speed. He is going to be a little bit slow, kind of reacting to certain things because it's just in training that he's had his practice. But when Kitts got his chance, a lot of time I thought he did really well. But I mean, you look to see what he did when he was at West Ham, you know, with John Hodgson. you know, the two of them pulled that team from the brink of relegation. But Kitts was a good player, and he was underrated. He was Rad's like.
Yeah.
He was, I mean, he's from the pit villages, isn't he? So he is a little bit nuts.
Dean Buckle says, as an ex-player, when you hear whispers and rumours regarding the takeover, signings, etc., where would they normally come from? Would it be old contacts at the club, or agents, or, you know, people in the media?
To be quite honest, I don't take notice of any of it. Because you know, not that I speak to that many people really, but you'd be like, well, where are you getting that from? And a lot of them will sort of say, well, from a friend of a friend, or a source from a source, or whatever. And I just think, you know what? Unless I see it on the TV and it's been announced by Newcastle or whoever, or the two parties, or however many parties is actually involved in this rumor, that's the only time I believe it. Because, like everybody else, as a fan, you get sucked in too many times. And you just think, oh, I can't wait for this to happen, and it's never been anywhere near the truth. So you just go, all right, well, I'll believe it when I see it.
Referee's been announced for the weekend, Steve. David Coote will be refereeing our first game back under Project Restart. Good choice.
Yeah, I had him a couple of times before the break, and obviously last year. He's a good referee. A good referee understands the game quite well. Not be overawed in that kind of atmosphere. He's very confident in his own ability, and rightly so. I think he's one of the good referees that's coming through. I mean, look, again, referees will make mistakes. I mean, I've got a game on Wednesday. I'm doing Man City and Arsenal, because my game was the very first game that got called off through coronavirus. So I'm working on Wednesday, thankfully. But referees will make mistakes. I mean, but sometimes for me, that's what makes the game really good, because that's what, you know, makes that controversy. And when you can talk afterwards with your mates having a pint, not that we can do that at the moment, like, I think that's why we love the game.
Stu Fraser's asking, who was the most underrated striker that you played against, and what was the emotions like being called up for your country?
I can't remember I mean, without trying to be funny, I think every striker that you played against was a household name back in the day. I can't remember playing against any kids that I thought, oh, he could be special. I mean, obviously there's Owen was coming through, but, you know, when you're playing against Bergkamp, Henry, Cantona, Kanchelskis, Hughes, all of these, and you just, you know, Ian Wright, all these playing against Alan as well, there was nobody that you thought, like, there's nobody like, well, you know, next season, this one's going to come of age. They were all top players at that particular time. So it was kind of, there was no, I might get away with this one because he's only a young kid kind of thing. So I haven't got anybody on that one. And of course, with the England thing, I think just being a professional footballer is everybody's dream. Everybody, I mean, you've got to see 95% of young lads want to be a professional footballer. So actually to become a professional footballer and play at the highest level, and the level that I played at for as many years as I did, I would have took that. I would have just sort of said, absolutely delighted with what I've done. But obviously to represent your country and to represent them, even though I didn't take part through injury in a big tournament, and the 96, which was excellent for this country as well. I can always remember my dad sort of saying, after I'd made my debut, no matter what happens, you'll always be England international. And that kind of straight away sunk in of like, wow, you know, I'm actually thought of by this manager as probably his best 2 or 3 centre halves in the country at this particular time.
Superb. Jimmy Ray says, can you ask Steve what his biggest regret is whilst playing for Newcastle?
Getting the 3 really bad injuries. The 3 bad injuries, as I said, I had compartment syndrome, which kept me out for over a year. I had 5 double hernia operations, which kept me out on and off for a year. And then I snapped my Achilles in the semi-final, the second semi-final against Tottenham. And that kept me out for a year. And I think when you're coming back from them injuries and then you're picking up, you know, the thigh strains or hamstring strains and stuff like that, it's sort of it puts such a brakes on your career and how many games that you want to play and be involved in, because that out of football, the worst thing about football is being injured. for a lot of reasons. But it's so hard just watching the lads train, watching the lads play, watching the lads win, and missing out on so many big games. So that's my biggest disappointment or regret.
Interesting thing on Twitter today as well from The Independent. I'm not going to ask you about this, Steve. I'll just read this out. A lot of people will know about journalist Miguel Delaney, who has, shall we say, been winding up the supporters. Well, a lot of people complained to the editor of The Independent, who has put out a letter which says, "Dear Sir, Madam," and this isn't to me, this is to numerous other people, "thank you for getting in touch with The Independent. We welcome the views of all our readers, including criticism. Our writers' conduct on social media fell below the standards we would expect. All tweets relating to this have now been deleted, and the writer has been reminded of the importance of exchanging views without going beyond the bounds of acceptability. We apologise for any offence caused. Kind regards, Madeleine Palax," who is the editorial compliance manager at The Independent. So it does show that if you complain to people's employers, you do tend to get a reaction. But the least we say about that guy, the better. I'd never heard about him before the takeover, and I hope I don't hear about him afterwards. Right, Sheffield United, Steve, is the game that we've got coming up, our first game. How do you see it going, mate, and have you got a prediction for us?
It'll be a tough one. I mean, I've seen Sheffield United a few times this season down at Bramall Lane. Difficult team to beat. I thought it would be a tough game for Newcastle to go down there early in the season, won, and yet Sheffield United turned over, teams in really good form at Bramall Lane. Obviously, they've got a game on Wednesday as well. They've got Villa, so that'll be a tough game for them. I think they've got like a really good set of players there. You wouldn't sort of say it like, oh, he's a brilliant player. He's a brilliant. They've got a collective group of excellent pros and some kind of players that have got very, very good ability. And I think that matched with their manager, Chris Wilder, who I think is a superb manager, and what he's done, they will be tough to beat. But I think that I said exactly the same when they played them at their place, and yet they came away with a win. You remember the John Joe Shelby goal when the goalkeeper stopped and all that kind of thing. It's going to be a tough one, but Newcastle's got to fancy the chances, regardless of I know there's no fans there, but regardless of that, they've got to be kind of fancy themselves as kind of, look, it's still our home ground. We're still going to have to put them to the test. And I think if they can do that, they can definitely pick up the 3 points.
Great stuff. So you're going for a win. I'm going for a win. I think the extra game, Sheffield, the game that Sheffield United have played before Newcastle will make a difference as well. Bez went for 2-2 yesterday, so I'm sure.
Well, he's not going to go against Sheffield United, is he?
It's his team, isn't it? It's his team.
It's his team.
Steve, good luck with the walks, mate, and I'll hopefully get you back on next week. And stay safe, pal, and enjoy the football. Enjoy your first game back this week.
I will do, mate. See you, Steve. All my love to the family.
Take care. Same to you, pal. Bye-bye.